Hello, hello. Welcome to Meditation Nerd. I'm glad you're here. I hope you're doing well. All right, so we're going to go ahead and just dive right in. We're going to start with a traditional Kundalini Yoga tune-in Adi mantra Ong Namo Gurudev Namo repeated 3 times. Go ahead and rub your palms together. You can soften your gaze or close your eyes. Bring your hands to heart center. Inhale, exhale. Inhale to begin. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Inhale, hold the breath, pull the root lock. Okay, sorry, you might hear some talking while we go through this. Okay, so I want you to bring to mind something that you cannot control right now. Of course, within your boundaries, please keep that in mind while we go through this. And I don't want you to bring up the story just, you know, and it can be one or two things. That's perfectly fine. We're just bringing this up to see how our body responds. Where does it show up in the body? The things that we cannot control. For me, it seems to be centered in my chest, like condensing, and my throat closing. That's where things I can't control shows up in my body. I tend to feel pretty hot. My mind kind of just spaces out. Almost as if my mind's like, well, I'm not needed, so see you later. And it's like, well, maybe don't disappear so quickly. We're only going to be here for a couple minutes. And of course, stay as long as is comfortable. If you need to step back sooner than we do, that's perfectly fine. Okay, and when I pull up a couple different things here, it seems to still be centered in a combination of my throat and my chest. So, okay, now I want you to let that go. Take a nice deep inhale. And if you need to, if a way that you need to step back is a form of stepping up or standing up and like shaking, or maybe touching something to really ground with like an object or the wall, or get up, look outside so that you can reference something outside of yourself, if that's a way that you need to clear the space for yourself, please do that. It doesn't have to be breath focused. That's just the way that I do it, typically speaking. So that's just my go to. That doesn't mean that that works for everyone or that you have to do it that way. Just as a reminder. Couple more breaths here. Okay. Now we're going to move into bring to mind something that you can control. A response, a choice, an action, right? Again, one or two things. And if you can do them in, one after another, with giving yourself space to check in with your body if there's a difference between them, if they, if you're responding differently to different aspects, gives you a deeper sense of how you respond, right? And again, if you just want to focus on one, that's perfectly fine as well. Okay, well, my brain function seems to be coming back, seems to be re-engaging. There is still some anxiety within my chest. That feels more like the weight of responsibility versus closing off to the hopelessness of there's nothing I can do, right? With the first option of what we can't control. And then there is still some tension in like my throat lymph nodes, my throat glands. I feel like that's more of a connection to using my voice. Okay, now I'm pulling up something else to see if there are similar responses. Okay, so that one I've got a little bit of fear running up my back, but there's a felt sense of empowerment within my chest at the same time. So, okay, there's also some joy that's just like bursting out of my heart, bringing tears to my eyes. That's kind of cool. We'll just be here for a couple more breaths. Okay, and I think there's a kitty cat out there talking, but I'm not sure where she is. Okay, one more breath. Inhale, exhale. Okay, for this next part, and again, please adapt this for however you find it easiest and best for you to ground. Okay. The approach I'm going to take today is I'm going to inhale as I push my arms outward as if I'm pushing the space to be larger. And then I'm just going to bring my hands back into my lap on the exhale. So inhale your arms out, taking up more space. Exhale your hands back into your lap. And then this time, inhale your hands up above you. Nice big stretch, also taking up more space. Exhale, hands back into your lap. We're going to do that one more time each side. So exhale your hands outward. Exhale back into your lap. Inhale those arms up. Exhale back into your lap. Okay, and then give yourself a little bit of a shake around your shoulders. I seem to have done something to my shoulder, and I'm not really sure what it was. My workout wasn't that crazy, so I don't remember pulling it. So I'm not really sure what's happening there. Um, so I wanted to bring up the different aspects of control as far as what we do and don't have, right? We really don't have any external control. We have internal control as far as how we respond or if we are reacting, right? Now, largely what I've heard within the meditative space, the self-help space, which I do not consider myself amongst. However, I do feel that meditation does fall into that largely, even if I disagree with that. Okay, that's an aside. The point being here is that this is largely how control is spoken about. And while I do agree with the sentiment that yes, outwardly we don't really have a ton of control, inwardly, yes, we do have control. That doesn't necessarily negate the damage that can be done. And part of what I feel like is missing is the somatic experience of the two. Also, what I found when I was kind of going through this and I started playing with my somatic experience as far as control was concerned, was that as I just was expressing here, where there can be fear going up your back while there's also empowerment in your chest, right? These two are not inseparable, and it's not an either or, it's a both and. Um, And while the things we can't control, that can feel very punishing when we sit with it, how it expresses in our body, what it's doing to our nervous system, how we check out mentally. If you're like me and your mind just goes, okay, well, I'm not needed here, so see ya. And it's like, well, not super helpful. Thanks for that. The point is that both of these are true. And what I've discovered for myself is that as I deepen my connection to the somatic experience and how I respond and relate to different aspects, it helps me better step into response or to catch that feeling of reaction arising. So I don't know if anybody else has had this experience. I have a weird, like, sort of vibration that happens within me when it's like the physical manifestation of reacting for me. It took me a really long time to kind of pinpoint how it felt when it was coming up. There's tension, there's heat, and it's like all of these thoughts just come flooding into my mind. And it's like I just become a little live wire. And it's like, okay, that's the reactive state for me. That's how that feels for me. And I don't want to speak to others from a reactive place. It rarely works out well for me or for them, right? Like, I don't want to be out here just flinging words about simply because that I feel like we have an overabundance of that currently. And I don't think that that's necessarily helpful in the vast majority of cases. So I wanted to approach this from a somatic experience type of expression. This has largely been going through my mind, this idea of control and different layers kind of opening up, because the teacher that I worked with for 6 years is stepping back from teaching. And while control wasn't really an issue, the vulnerability and the sadness that kind of came from that, I noticed my grasping for control, right? Vulnerability is scary, feeling raw is scary, we can't have that. So, how do I control this? Like, you know what I mean? There's certain default settings that kind of arise from that. And shifting how I'm approaching meditation after reading McMindfulness and different studies, looking at how these are interplaying with how my meditative practice itself is shaping me. There's a lot of different shifts and changes happening, and it can feel very unstable. And the most sensible thing is to reach for control, right? What can I hold on to as all of these things are shifting? Um, and I do what I normally do, which is, okay, well, I'm going to reach for meditation. Yes, that's a part of it. I'm not cutting that out. I'm not dismissing that. I wanted to try the somatic approach and look at, okay, well, what's actually happening here? So I wanted to share that different take on control as a somatic experience. Now I realize that this is this can be very complicated for a lot of people, especially if you have unresolved trauma. So I'm not putting this out here lightly. So I wanted to remind everyone, please, within your boundaries, here are some other ways to reground that are not your breath if that's an issue. If you need something more solid in your hand, touching the wall, looking outside, that type of thing, right? Or getting up, dancing, shaking, maybe stepping outside altogether, right? Because I realize that there's a lot that goes into this, and somatic isn't necessarily the easiest access point for everyone. It was just a different way for me to approach it personally, as all of these things for me are shifting, and there are a lot of changes that are taking place as my meditative practice is also shifting and deepening. It Lots of different parts can feel unstable, and typically I reach for mantras, I'll reach for meditative practice, and this time it just didn't feel appropriate. I wanted to sink into the somatic experience because that's what's scaring me. So that's why I went this route. And I wanted to keep it short. That way, anyone that wanted to partake could. It wasn't too deep to re traumatize anyone. So feel free to take this deeper according to what you can do. Feel free to share any insights or different ways that you deepened it. It might help other people, right? So we're going to end it here just holding both, that you can feel both afraid and empowered. You can feel both helpless and step into that. You know, it's both and here, not either or. I find it's rarely either or. It's typically going to be both and, at least in my world. So I'm sharing that from this point of reference. So hopefully this gave you a different view. At least I hope you at least laughed if it wasn't necessarily super deepening or you weren't able to go as deep. So of course, as always, thank you for joining me. I'm glad you were here, and I'll see you next time.